Zoe, you're a therapist in London. Tell me a bit about how you work.
Okay, so yes, my name is Zoe and I'm a therapist in London, and I also do consultancy around mental health for brands, wellbeing brands in the main. Half my time is private practice, so I see up to between 16 and 20 clients a week, and the other half of my time is consulting work and helping people to understand how to introduce mental health into the things that they do in a really sustainable way. So not just working at the sort of surface level, but really understanding how these things can be implemented into the core of the way that teams work and businesses work. That is lots of sort of psychoeducational and support workshops and groups. My private practice is mainly person-centered, I would say dynamic person-centered as in an approach, but I'm also trained in trauma reduction, and there's a bit of psychodynamic work that comes in depending on what the person comes to me with. So, if someone's coming with emotional difficulties, relational difficulties, it's slightly different to say someone who's battling the rock bottom of their addiction. But in the main, I work with a sort of person-centered approach, which ultimately believes that the person, the client, we all have the ideas within us that we need to look after ourselves. We just need help accessing them and sort of straightening them out and understanding ourselves a little bit better. So that's kind of how I work as a therapist in a nutshell.
Now, Zoe, you have an ebook coming out in September, which is called Your Mental Health First Aid Kit. Can you tell me about that, please?
That is a sort of spin-off from an Instagram account that I started early last year, which, to be honest, I didn't ever think that therapists could use social media, but I felt very strongly that I had information that people should just have. They shouldn't have to pay to get the information. And I've had therapy for a long, long time. And it always surprised me when I spoke to my friends and my peers that they just didn't have information about boundaries or about self-esteem or the very basics of the therapy that I had received. So I've always felt strongly that this information should be taught and should be available to people. And eventually, sort of 8 years into my career, I was like, do you know what? How can I get this out there a little bit more? I felt a little bit like I was doing something that was wrong because of the stigma attached to therapy and mental health, and that it should be confidential and it's private and it's secret. So that was a bit of a challenge in the first place. But it was so well received that just under a year and a half later, there's an ebook coming out based on it. So the ebook is a precursor to my main book, which is coming out next year, which is Your Mental Health Workout, which is a program of things that people can do to look after their mental health, alongside any other recovery programs or therapy that they might be receiving. Just kind of day-to-day things, week-to-week things that you can do that really protect the integrity of your mind. The reason we brought out the ebook is because of COVID, because of lockdown, there is a huge demand for support and being able to support ourselves in our mental health at the moment. And lots of the time when people have anxiety or stress or they're grieving something, and we've all lost so much this year, you say, well, you have to help yourself. And the person will say, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know how. So there's little bits and pieces in there that basically tell people these are steps that you can take in order to help you with your anxiety, help you with your stress, help you not sabotage yourself, help you understand how to look after yourself both inside and out, make sure that your self-esteem is in good shape, reassess your boundaries. We've all had a massive sort of reassessment of values and morals and boundaries this year, and it's stuff that happens in our less conscious being that when we make it conscious, it's very easy to tackle and explain and understand. But until we do that, we don't have access to the information that we need inside of ourselves. So the ebook is a first aid kit that ultimately just gives people the tools to survive 2020 and any other mental health crises that might happen in the future. And then so that they can be in a really good place to do the 5-week program, which is coming out next year.
What would be an example of something that people might be surprised by that you would include in this workout?
The thing that I'm talking about on the Instagram account at the moment is self-esteem. And there's always, in every topic, there's something that people are often surprised by. But with self-esteem, the one that I always come back to is that it is absolutely about feeling equal to other human beings. It's not about feeling more than, because we all know what the less than place feels like, and worthless place and not good enough and all that kind of stuff. And we recognize that as a lack of confidence or a lack of esteem or a lack of self-love. But the mistake we can sometimes make is we think that actually we have to feel better than other people to like ourselves enough. And ultimately, what we're really just looking for is equality and feeling on balance with other people and aligned with ourselves. So I try to work very carefully with people to find that balance, and understand that actually going into the better than place is the thing that people resist because they think it's arrogant and self-focused and all those horrible words that we attach to it. And because of the stigma attached to, is stigma the right word? Maybe. Because of the stigma attached to self-love or self-care, we swing into better than. And actually, all we need to know is that we're good enough. That's where we need to be sitting. You don't have to have all the confidence in the world or feel better than everybody else. But that is as much a self-esteem wobble as feeling less than. And when people hear that, they're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, it's just about being stable. It's not about being more than or less than. It's just about being aligned and stable and grounded in my own relationship with myself.
And what about therapy? Where do you think therapy fits in with most people's lives?
I mean, historically, therapy, I mean, you'll know this, but historically, therapy has been about getting people from sort of -10 to 0. And nowadays, particularly in the millennial generation, it's about getting people from 0 to +10 and making sure that they're motivated, they're fulfilling their potential. And people come to therapy for all sorts of reasons, not just because they're feeling bad about themselves or they've got a problem that needs tackling or a crisis that's happening. Sometimes people just need therapy in their lives because they like to have that hour a week. They like to have that check-in with someone. And I spend a lot of time saying to people, you can come to therapy for as long as you want. But likewise, I'm not someone who gets people stuck in therapy for, 15, 20 years, unless they want to, unless it's something that they choose as a lifestyle choice. I think it fits into our sort of day-to-day lives at the moment because we have a lot of, well, we're online at the moment, and online is very public. And I think sometimes what we forget is that we don't always have to share everything. And a therapy space gives you that permission to have a private opportunity to talk about the things that maybe go on in your mind that you don't necessarily want to talk to people that you're going to see every day about, because they're sort of private thoughts and feelings. But it also gives someone an opportunity to have a little bit of a sort of, I suppose, an outside perspective, which is really important when we've got so much social media around, because we tend to be drawn to corners of the internet that reinforce messages that we already have. And having someone who's not in that with you will bring a different perspective and a sort of reflective stance that will just offer something separate. So I'd really like to see people just going to therapy the same way that we do sort of like physical health checkups, or seeing a nutritionist, or seeing a physio if you had a sprained ankle. Or the other thing I always say is it doesn't always have to be sitting in a room with someone crying. There are other ways of doing it. And with the mental health workout stuff, I always talk about a therapeutic space. So whether that's a group or if it maybe is an online version, or maybe you do choose to have one-to-one sessions, maybe you choose to just do 5 or 6 and see how it goes. It's not a lifetime's worth of commitment, but it is a massive investment in your well-being. And that, however much therapy you do, however long you spend in therapy, that investment lasts for the rest of your life. And I think that's the way to kind of think about it and get our head around it. In the same way we look after our bodies, going to therapy or having a therapeutic space is an investment in the health of our mind.
Do you think there is a big difference between sitting in the room seeing clients and now, because of COVID, having to see them online?
I think, yes, there is a difference from sitting in the room with clients and seeing them online. And historically, my experience has been that I haven't wanted to go online, but I have, like many other therapists, surprised myself in how helpful it's been. And following a sort of slight adjustment period from those that moved from face to face to online, actually, it has allowed for people to do some of the work that needs to be done psychologically much quicker than it was happening when we were in the room, because they don't have the stressful journey to get to me. There isn't the sort of vulnerability of having two bodies in a room, and actually people being in their own space and feeling very comfortable with that has allowed them to very much be much more sort of open and relaxed, and have and feel more, some more motivated, but also some have taken themselves by surprise in the work that they've been able to feel ready to do. Whereas when we've been in the room, they haven't quite felt ready or prepared or stable enough to go into particular traumas or difficulties or talk about feelings that feel a bit embarrassing or shameful. And being online has actually allowed some of that to happen. The thing I suggest to all my clients with the online work is that they create a sort of therapeutic environment for themselves. So they do it in the same place each week. They have their tissues, they have some water, so that there is as much familiarity with the therapeutic framework and the containment of therapy as we can recreate on an online situation.
We have noticed, though, that clients in the last couple of weeks, as things have loosened up and we're out of lockdown, kids are going back to school, people are starting to go back to their offices, we have noticed that people are requesting to see therapists in person. Do you think that for clients there can be a real appeal to being in person with a therapist, or do you think one can overcome that?
For me, being in person with a client is always important, because we're working with the mind, but we're also working with the body, and being able to see body language and experience the person's energy shifts and micro expressions is a really, really important part of how I look after my clients. Having said that, I have found myself finding different ways of doing that online, and part of that has been about asking the client to pay really close attention to what's happening in their body and what they notice about their movements, and getting them to reflect on it, which in some ways is really helpful because it means they're doing it and not me, which might be why the work can we have a bit more access to that side of things. I think online work isn't going to work for everyone in the long run. And I think it's important that moving forward, we're able to be a little bit more flexible about working online and working in person. I think we have to also take into consideration the anxieties and the fears about contamination, about the virus, about sanitizing, and the effect that that will have on the therapeutic space and the therapeutic containment, which adds another layer of work, which when we're working online isn't sort of interrupting, it's not
Yes.
contaminating the person's process. So I think we're going to have to think very carefully about the effect of going back to face-to-face work, but I absolutely believe that there are benefits to both. Now, if you'd asked me this time last year, I would have said I only do face-to-face work, but I can absolutely see that both online and face-to-face have their advantages.
It would be great to know what you yourself do to help you cope with the COVID situation.
So for myself, I think it's been really important to keep a little bit of structure. And I've been very lucky in that I've had the book to focus on, and I can do my work from home. I can see my clients from home. So I think keeping that purpose and structure in place has been vital to me. I was also lucky enough that I wasn't isolating alone, so I didn't experience the loneliness that some people were plunged into. but staying on top of things like sleep hygiene and getting up on time and making sure that you're looking after your sort of physical needs are one of the things that give, I think, when you're at home, when you're alone, you haven't got contact with other people, give you the message that you are still active and worthwhile and healthy. My biggest tip that I always give out to people is this idea of checking in with ourselves. So most of the time when we wake up in the morning, we either don't pay attention to how we are, or we kind of think, how's today going to go? How do I want today to go? How do I want to feel? So we can, in a difficult time, we can set ourselves up for failure in trying to change the very organic nature of our emotions. So one of the main things that I do is when I wake up in the morning, I will check in with how I'm actually feeling right now, and then decide how I'm going to work with that for the rest of today. So if I'm not having a great day, if I'm not feeling too energized, or I'm a bit tired, or I'm a bit sad, or I'm angry about something, I need to think about how I'm going to work with that for the rest of the day, rather than trying to change it and get rid of it and escape it. And I think that, in terms of lockdown, has been my kind of saving grace, because it's meant that I don't have to find ways to get rid of my feelings. We haven't got access, or didn't have access to, lots of the things that we would use to help us take the edge off our feelings. So the thing that I said to people all the way along is, this is your opportunity to work with your feelings and to understand them and get closer to them. And from that point, we can make, from that position, from being closer to our feelings, we make really good decisions about life. It's our feelings that tell us what we need to do and how we need to look after ourselves. So my saving grace has been this checking in and working on getting closer to my feelings, so that I can react in line with what I need during a very difficult time.
That's terrific, Zoe. Thank you very much. Thanks for speaking to us.
Thank you so much.
Zoë Aston, who's the author of Your Mental Health First Aid Kit.